Hey everyone, welcome back. So, something big just happened, and it could directly affect your wallet, especially if you're retired, working for tips, or just trying to make ends meet. President Trump and House Republicans just introduced a massive new tax and spending bill. And while it's making headlines for a few flashy items, there's actually a lot more going on beneath the surface. For example, did you know this bill could mean a $4,000 bonus deduction for seniors and no more taxes on tips and overtime? Yeah, it's not just talk about corporations. There are real changes here that could show up in your paycheck or tax return. And for anyone feeling squeezed by inflation or worried about rising costs, there are parts of this bill that are meant to put a little breathing room back into your budget. Whether or not they'll work is a whole other question. But it's worth understanding how all of this could play out in your everyday life. Stick with me because we're going to break it down in a way that makes sense and, more importantly, shows you what this all could mean for you. So let's start with the core of the bill. A lot of people remember the 2017 Trump tax cuts. They lowered income tax rates, increased the standard deduction, and changed the way a lot of businesses were taxed. Well, those cuts are set to expire at the end of 2025. If nothing happens, most Americans would actually see their taxes go up. Now, this bill is trying to prevent that by not only extending the cuts, but expanding them. For example, the standard deduction would go up by $1,000 for single filers and $2,000 for married couples. That might not sound like much at first, but it's actually meaningful, and a higher standard deduction means less of your income gets taxed at all. So if you're already stretched thin, this change would help lower your taxable income, and that could mean a smaller tax bill come April. And the bill also increases what's called the pass-through deduction for small businesses and freelancers. Right now, if you're self-employed or run a small business, you might be able to deduct 20% of your business income. This new bill bumps that up to 20%. That is a solid break for a lot of gig workers, independent contractors, and mom and pop shops. But maybe the most talked about parts of this bill are the populist tax breaks. These are changes meant to feel more personal and immediate, like the provision that would make tips tax-free. Yes, really. If you're a server, bartender, hairstylist, basically anyone in a tip profession, you wouldn't have to pay federal income tax on that tip money anymore. That's assuming you make under $160,000, which covers the vast majority of people in those jobs. And it's not just tips. Overtime pay would also be exempt from income taxes. Now, keep in mind that doesn't mean you won't still pay Social Security and Medicare taxes. Those are different. But for regular income tax, that extra time you put in at work could come with a lighter tax load. The idea here is to reward work, to send a message that if you're putting in the hours, you should keep more of your paycheck. It's a smart political move, but also one that could have a real impact on take-home pay for millions of people. So then what does this mean if you're a retiree or getting close to retirement? Well, this bill introduces something called a $4,000 senior deduction. It's a bonus standard deduction for people age 65 and older. And honestly, this part caught my attention because while Trump had previously floated the idea of eliminating taxes on Social Security altogether, which is not in the current bill, this $4,000 extra deduction is something. It doesn't wipe out taxes on Social Security, but it could lower your taxable income enough to reduce how much you pay, especially if you're living on fixed income from retirement, pensions, or Social Security checks. The deduction does phase out at higher income levels, so it's really aimed at middle income and lower income seniors, people who are trying to stretch every dollar to cover medical bills, groceries, housing, and other rising costs. And speaking of rising costs, there's a new tax deduction for car loan interest. But there's a catch. It only applies if the car is made in America. You could deduct up to $10,000 in interest, which could be a big help if you just bought a new vehicle and are staring down a hefty monthly payment. But again, this benefit phases out for high earners. The bill tries to keep most of these breaks focused on what they're calling working-class Americans. Now, another piece that's been getting attention is something called MAGA accounts. These are savings accounts for kids under the age of 8. Each child would get $1,000 automatically, and families could put in up to $5,000 per year tax-free. The money can be used for things like education, buying a home, starting a business, or job training. This part feels like a response to baby bonds, a concept that's been floated by Democrats, where kids get government-funded accounts to help close the wealth gap. But MAGA accounts have a conservative twist. They're framed more around personal responsibility and entrepreneurship. So, if you're a parent or grandparent thinking about your child's future, this is one to watch. Also, let's talk quickly about something that's creating some drama inside the Republican Party, the SALT deduction cap. SALT stands for state and local taxes. Back in 2008, the deduction was capped at $10,000. That meant if you live in a high tax state like California or New York, you couldn't deduct all your state and local taxes from your federal taxes anymore. The new bill raises that cap to $30,000, but only for people making under $400,000. That's an improvement, but not everyone's happy. Some lawmakers want the cap gone completely. Others think raising it is a handout to wealthy homeowners in blue states. So there's a real tug-of-war happening on this issue, and it could affect whether the bill even passes. Another thing to keep an eye on is how this bill handles green energy, or rather how it rolls a lot of it back. Subsidies and tax credits for electric vehicles, wind, and solar energy would be cut or phased out. Instead, the bill shifts focus back toward traditional industries, like manufacturing and defense. So if you're planning to buy an EV and we're counting on that $7,500 tax credit, that might be going away. And then there's something pretty new, a proposed VAT tax on money being sent overseas through remittances. That wouldn't apply to U.S. citizens, but it would apply to many immigrants sending money to family abroad. Some critics are saying this part could create tension or hit already vulnerable workers hard. But Republicans are pitching it as a way to raise revenue and keep more money inside the U.S. economy. Oh, and one last thing. Universities with massive endowments are being targeted too. The bill would tax their investment income at a much higher rate, jumping from about 1.4% to up to 21%. That's a big leap. Lawmakers argue that some elite colleges have gotten too powerful, politically biased, and unaccountable, and they want to see that money being put to use in a different way. Now, to avoid a government shutdown or debt default, the bill also includes a $4 trillion increase to the debt ceiling. That's a huge number, but it's meant to give Congress breathing room without more last-minute standoffs. It's not the flashiest part of the bill, but it's one of the most important to keep everything running. So then, where does this all leave us? Well, some parts of this bill are clearly designed to appeal to everyday Americans, especially workers, retirees, and families. Whether it's tax-free tips, that bonus deduction for seniors, or new savings tools for kids, there are pieces here that might help you keep more of your money. At the same time, the bill is massive and not without controversy. It rolls back clean energy support, introduces new taxes on remittances, and offers big benefits to businesses and higher education reform that some people think go too far. And then what does this mean for you? That depends on your age, your job, your family, and where you live. But here's the bottom line. Your taxes could be changing in a big way very soon.